Hello and welcome to Faith Talks. In today's program, we'll be talking about faith on the waves. Joining me in the studio today is Stephen Hulbert and Jake Jackson, both avid surfers. Now, most of the time I see you guys, it's not going to be in a studio, it's going to be next to the seaside with a surfboard under your arm. Tell me, what is so interesting about surfing, Steve?
It's an experience. It's something that you don't understand unless you're in the water on a surfboard. It's something that that takes you away from whatever's on land into an environment that's just something completely elsewhere.
What about you, Jake? How does surfing feel for you? What does it do for you?
Very similar. Just like I love being immersed in nature and God's creation, and it's just to being taken away and plucked and put out in the ocean is it's just a feeling of immersion and just being deep in something that you're not normally a part of when you're surrounded by lots of people in a normal sort of urban environment.
So there is that kind of solitude on the waves in some ways. It looks pretty scary when you're standing on land sometimes and see you making all these waves. Is it a scary sport, Jake?
It can be when it's rough. Stephen's a lot braver than I am to ride the slightly larger waves. I tend to just sit out there and cower under some of them. But yeah, a lot of the time it's fun. Even when you're out there, I mean, you get that adrenaline even when you have like similar experiences in other sports or other sort of activities. You do enjoy it because of the adrenaline. So even if you are scared, it's still enjoyable.
So to be actively involved in surfing, you surely cannot live here up by Watford or in London. So where do you live and why do you live there?
I live in St Austell, a town on the south coast of Cornwall, which actually doesn't get surf except for in the winter, which we also do. But all the surfing happens on the north coast, so we tend to head across there, which is not really that far of a drive because the coasts are really close together.
I have to pause there and say, winter?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
We are not in the Mediterranean, in case you hadn't noticed, or Hawaii or anywhere nice and warm. This is England. How can you surf in the winter?
Surfing in the winter does make the sport a little bit more expensive because you have to get a thicker wetsuit and you have to wear gloves, boots and a hood. The only part of you that's really exposed to the elements is your face, which can get chilly. But if you've got the right stuff, it's actually a really fun experience. Yeah, you feel a bit heavier, but it's still fun. And the better waves are in the winter.
But for me, that actually indicates that both of you are serious about your surfing. It's not just some holiday sport.
No, yeah, it's definitely a serious activity.
I know you live down in St Austell because you are working in a project, in a house group down there. So as we are Christian programs, I would love to just explore a little bit about surfing as an outreach. Is that something you're involved in or is it just for fun?
It started off for fun when I was first down there. I've lived in Cornwall before and we went into the sea and things like that, but I actually didn't take up surfing until about a year after I moved down to Cornwall to work on the project down there. And so, yeah, it started off for fun, but then slowly I saw opportunities to actually have it as an outreach. Cornwall has surfing communities that you can't be a part of unless you surf, and so we started to explore that.
So before we talk about exploring more of those surfing communities, can you just explain to us what do you mean by a project?
We run a church plant in the town of St Austell. It's called Live St Austell. We ran with the idea that Christianity is an experience and an experience that you need to live with intentionally. So the meaning of live is living intentionally versus just merely existing. And so we decided to take that as part of our name, and I think it's something that the town that we live in really needs.
So Jack, before you started being involved with the project that you're also part of, were you into surfing before?
No, I wasn't. I was living and studying in Cornwall, but I'd never sort of caught the surfing bug. Never. I'd always been into outdoor activities and sports like skateboarding and similar activities like that. But yeah, until I'd met Stephen and spent quite a bit of time with him, and he sort of introduced surfing to me, I hadn't really done it as a hobby, like a permanent hobby. Obviously, I've been in the sea on holidays in Cornwall and things like that. But yeah.
But you got hooked.
Yeah, got hooked very, very quickly.
So tell me something about these surfing communities that you mentioned. If you're coming as outsiders and not have had really much surfing experience, do you get accepted into these communities? What do you feel, Jake?
In certain areas and spots in Cornwall where you might want to surf, there is quite a lot of what they call localism, where the local surfing community doesn't tend to take kindly to strangers or outsiders coming into their community and surfing on their beach. But some of the more widely attended beaches, sort of around the Newquay area, a lot of the holiday makers use them. So there's not really much localism in those bigger areas. But some of the smaller, more secretive surfing spots in Cornwall, there can be quite serious localism. Yeah.
Well, what about you, Steve? You talk about being intentional in your outreach, in your ministry, and you can say that from the house group there. Mm-hmm. How do you do that with surfing? Because earlier you said that surfing was very individual. It was out enjoying nature by yourself. How do you then make that a ministry?
To be able to connect with another surfer, that actually mainly happens on dry land. Though if we're surfing a certain beach regularly enough, then you start to get to know those who also surf the same beach regularly. So it really depends, but most of the time the people that we go surfing with, we've developed a friendship with them on dry land, and then we go surfing together.
How do you develop friendship on dry lands? Do you wear a certain T-shirt saying I'm a surfer, or you know, I have noticed there is a certain look in attire among the surfers. How do you know there's other surfers?
We found them actually in a lot of the other ministries that we run with Liv Sen Austell. So we found guys that like to surf through playing basketball in the local park near us, and there's people that like to surf, and we're like, oh, we like to surf, we should go surfing together. And so we make those kind of arrangements to go and just have that experience together. When we're actually in the water, we might not see that person again until we come out of the water. But when we're out of the water, then that's when, you know, the experiences and all those kind of things can be shared. Or if we've had an opportunity to see them on a wave, we can talk about it and things like that. So when we're in the water, yeah, it's very individual. And actually most of the ministry related to surfing actually happens on the dry land. But it still involves going surfing.
So, but how does that do? You know, so you talk about your experiences, you say, oh, cool wave. I'm sure you have a specific surfing language as well, or lingo that you use. But how do you take that into an interest in God?
With surfing, we don't enter the water before praying about it. It doesn't matter who's with us. We'll stand on the beach. We'll have the board strapped to our ankle. We'll be ready to go in the water, and we'll just say a word of prayer together. And the prayer pretty much just goes along the lines of asking God to keep us safe in the water, because it is dangerous, and asking Him to give us some fun, and thanking Him for His creation and having surfing as part of that. And if it's a sunny day, we're obviously grateful for that, because it just makes it a more enjoyable experience.
Have you had people, being a bit uncomfortable with praying beforehand, Jake? Have you noticed that people are like raising their eyebrows, or is it just naturally taken for granted that you guys just pray?
I haven't noticed anybody being physically uncomfortable. I mean, a lot of the time when we do it, there's a few other 1,000 people on the beach milling around and sat down and sunbathing, so it may appear a bit strange to some of those people. But then again, people may think that's something different and come and ask you a question about it, because you might not see people praying in public like that. But most of the guys we come with, even the guys that are sort of openly not interested in Christianity, they don't seem to mind it at all. They happily stand there and wait for us to all walk in the surf together afterwards. So.
And for some, this might be the first time they come across anybody praying. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it could well be that they have never witnessed somebody praying with them or for them before an activity or before anything before. So yeah.
There was one friend that we made who, when we prayed, he actually joined in. He's got no Christian experience whatsoever, but he had one little sentence to add in there, and it's just like, oh yeah, we can have that.
Jake, you came down to Cornwall to study and to work and all of that, and then suddenly you started making contact with this group. How did that go about? I know you come from a Christian home, and you moved to Cornwall, probably like many young people, also to get away from home, and to pursue further studies. Were you looking actively for a community like the one in the Liv St Dostal?
When I left home to go to study at university, I kind of decided that would be it for my church going time, and then someone helped me keep in contact with a local church that in St Austell I'd never been to, and that's how I came into contact with Steve and the church plant project that we now run in St Austell itself.
Now, why have you started to work in the project as well? You live in the same house as everybody. Why did you make that decision?
Just being in contact with the church, I still didn't feel I had that sort of community that I was subconsciously searching for, like you mentioned. And through becoming friends with Steve and contacts that Steve had and friends and family, that community sort of began to be fulfilled for me. I began to feel part of something that I wasn't part of before in terms of my sort of Christian journey. And so it just felt good and felt right at the time. And so after studying and searching to find work, I was given the opportunity to come down and volunteer and be part of the church plant that Steve was running. And I snapped at the chance because I knew all the contacts and friends in the area from beforehand. So for me as a volunteer, it was easier for me to do that sort of outreach. And yeah, I haven't sort of really looked back since. I've been living there a few years now. And yeah, it's just like having another family away from home, really, for me.
And I know that Steve's wife Jenna is a fabulous cook. That must definitely add to the thing.
Yeah, that really helps.
But aside from surfing, what else do you do in the Liv St Dostal? I want to talk more about surfing, but I just want to hear, because you have a community that you live in. So aside from surfing, do you just leave the surfers on the beach, or do you try to include them more in other things?
Well, the surfing route is still one that we're working with. We haven't quite got it exactly to where we want it to be yet. I'd say that the more successful ministry so far has been the basketball one, where we're meeting locals and playing basketball, and yes, it's also gone into surfing from that as well. So it's we haven't managed to actually get people from the surfing into the house yet. That's not to say that won't happen. It's just that it takes time, because things do. But the network that we've created through surfing has given us far more scope than the basketball has. So I mean, there's pros and cons with both, and so there's large opportunities that I see ahead of us that will be taking place.
Such as?
We've hooked up with Christian Surfers, which is an international organisation. It runs worldwide in loads of different countries, and we've hooked up with Christian Surfers UK, and particularly with the group that runs in the southwest, and so we've gotten really involved with some of the activities that they run, like beach cleans on Fistral Beach in Newquay. And helping out with surf competitions. So, what's it? 2 weeks from in fact next week, on the weekend, we're going to be helping with the belly boarding surf championships on Chapel Porth Beach, and we'll be basically helping with keeping the scores and putting them into the tablatures. And it's just a little thing that we can do to be part of an event where they've got 400 competitors all in one day.
How do you see that transferring into outreach and faith? Because people will be critical and say, you're just surfing and having fun. There is no real value in it as a ministry. You should pursue more traditional routes of ministry if you want to make an impact in the community.
I think, I think there's so many different ways to do ministry. Some of the traps that we put ourselves into is that we create one way to do it, or maybe just a couple, and then that leaves so many people out. We've got 300,000 odd surfers here in the UK. Who's going to reach them? And so, if we're purely doing one type of ministry, we're ignoring 300,000 people. If we're doing just surfing as a ministry, we're ignoring how many other thousand people. And so to say that it's not a ministry is writing off a lot of people. And so I wouldn't say that about that the same way I wouldn't say about any other ministry. I think there's many ways to reach people for Christ, and I don't think we should ever write off any way as long as we're reaching people for Christ.
So how would a surfing event like you're going to, how would that connect faith-wise? Is it to get contacts? Is it just to be present? What is the goal for that, if you can put it that way?
It's definitely a presence. The thing that Christian Surfers is working on is developing that presence, and it takes time for people who aren't Christian to trust an organisation that has Christian in the name. And it's worked, because now Christian surfers go on the surf competitions that run around the UK. So Christian surfers will be present up in Scotland when they run surf competitions up there. They'll be down in Bournemouth and Brighton for different events that take place there. And obviously a lot of the best surf also takes place in Cornwall, and so there's many competitions that happen there, from junior surfers to the UK Pro Tour sort of surfing. And so the Christian surfers are involved in all of those, and their role within these surf competitions is to actually look after those who are competing. So most of the time, the ministry simply is making breakfast for them, but it provides an opportunity to actually speak to those who are within the surfing world. Couple of the guys who work for Christian Surfers also are on the judging for the competitions, and so they've really gotten into the surf community there, and it just offers those kind of opportunities to speak to people that ordinarily we just wouldn't have a chance.
There's two things I want to pick up on. Firstly, I want to just look at, you were saying that surfing community is so different from other communities. How would you define that? Is a surfer very different from others, or how would you kind of define, what are some of the things that make a surfing community tick?
Surfing is a lifestyle, pretty much, for those that live in Cornwall. Some people joke about it, but you have your JSA allowance, and some people will call it their Just Surf allowance. They're that serious. They would rather surf than have a job. Of course, there are honest surfers who surf in between their job, and they're good guys. But it's really because they're so involved in the surfing sort of lifestyle, they can't really relate to much else other than what they love. And now if you're able to bring the creator of the surf into that atmosphere, then I think there's something good going there.
You're talking about bringing the creator and looking after creation, and I know you're very keen on beach cleans. Jake, tell me a little bit about beach cleans. What is that, and why do you do it as a group?
They take place nationally across the whole of the UK, and mainly organised by a group called Keep Britain Tidy, but also in association with Surfers Against Sewage, who is an organisation specifically looking at protecting our beaches and our waves and the general sort of ocean environment around the UK. but yeah, keep Britain tidy, organise monthly or weekly at certain beaches, beach cleans, just to pick up litter as you would doing a litter picking exercise in a park or on a street in a normal sort of urban community. We just tend to do it on a beach. Some of the beaches we frequent have sand dunes, so a lot of litter can get collected in certain areas. But yeah, and that's just we get people from all walks of life coming together because it's organised by a national charity, a national organisation, just coming together, people that want to give something back to their community, to come and help with a beach clean. So we get to meet numerous different people from different walks of life through that as well, not just people from the surfing community.
But how do you feel that ties into ministry?
It's protecting our environment and protecting something that was made for us by God. And so if we can keep that clean and protect it from further damage, I feel that is a way of sort of giving back to God and keeping what He made for us, keeping it clean, for want of a better word. Yeah. And keeping the standard up.
So both of you got into surfing because you were involved in the Live St. Austell project. Has it made a difference in your life, Jake, to be involved in surfing?
Oh yeah, massively. It's given me another sort of hobby, it really keeps you physically fit. You have to have a lot of endurance to keep swimming. I was never a good swimmer, and I wouldn't class myself as a good swimmer, but I can surf, and so I am quite scared of the water sometimes, but I pray when I'm out in the water that God will keep me safe, that I won't drown sometimes, and that I'll have the energy to get back to shore. And yeah, it's been a massive benefit, that and spiritually. It's a real nice break when you've got the hustle and bustle of life and job. I work as well as being a volunteer. There's always stuff going on in the house and always stuff in your head, and it's a really good way to help clear your head and to think clearly and to talk to God about problems you might have in your life as well as being an exercise and an activity.
What about you, Stephen? What has it done for your faith life to start surfing?
For me, it helps in developing my personal relationship with God. Like Jake was saying, it takes you away from things that are getting you down, or from just the busyness that sometimes you can get yourself into in life. And once you've stepped foot off the beach into the water, you're free from everything. And yeah, there's fun in riding a wave, but it's also nice sometimes just to sit there, to be out in the water and just sit on your board and just, I find it's good thinking time. It's good time for speaking to God. I mean, I usually speak to God on most of the waves that I get on anyway, like whether it's like thank yous or can't you make this one bigger, and things like that. But it's just great to be able to kind of separate yourself from what can get you down, and to be in that environment where, yes, there's waves and things like that, and people think, oh, that's really rough, but in the same way, it's also really tranquil, and you're just in this environment where you think, I guess peace is the word that comes to mind for me.
So we've been talking about the surfing community, we've been talking about faith and your journey and how you've ended up surfing and how it fills you spiritually. What are your hopes for the projects that you're working on? What is your hope for the community that you are involved in, and how are you looking to the future?
Well, futuristically, I mean, we've joined, like I said, we've joined up with Christian surfers. So we've only just started working on a Christian surfers St. Austell, which is a way for us to be able to also be more in contact with a lot of the local Christians, not just the Adventists, but also the Baptists, the Methodists, and because Cornwall has a lot of churches, and there are people who are in St. Austell who are Christian, who also surf. And so if we can make a community of believers who also surf, then we're going to make an even larger impact on the community in St Austell who surf but just aren't Christian yet.
What about you, Jake? Where do you see things going with the project?
We're currently trying to organise beach cleans on the south coast, very close to where we live, so we can sort of, as Steve said, integrate the local Christians and the local surfing community that we're trying to meet, and use that as a way to help them gain some kind of responsibility and care for the beaches, which are really close to where we live. And so, yeah, I hope that can lead to creating a lot more friendships and a lot more friendship groups. And there are always people that care about the environment no matter where you live. So I'm sure we're going to be able to meet some interesting people and people who share the same views about the environment, especially the beaches as well.
And so, as you continue just outreach with surfing and surfing yourself and just making those contacts, where do you see God in all of this?
Well, as far as the beach cleans are concerned, I see that as being an act of worship towards God. I see God working in the lives of the people that we're meeting. Sometimes, we just get surprised with questions that are asked, and even from those who may already be a Christian but just haven't really related their faith to surfing yet, and how they tie together so well. And it's just interesting to be working with individuals and you're thinking, oh, this is going to take forever with this person, and all of a sudden someone will ask something. It's like, oh wow, well maybe God's doing something that I wasn't aware of. And it's just nice to have those experiences, because they're really encouraging as well, because it means that, oh wait, something is happening. and they're great because it means that someone is changing as well.
I want to say thank you to both of you for coming in the studio today and abandoning your surfboards and coming here and talking to us about surfing and faith and how all of that is interacting. And why not add your voice to the debate by visiting our Facebook group or email us your thoughts on today's program. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.